That's what we did in the previous class. So the issue here is that I don't think it's a good idea for us to spend a lot of time discussing the theory here. What we need to do is that these are the things you already know, but you've already learned this in your probably 11th or 12th classes. So we'll quickly finish the theory part and we'll start solving some problems. Hello? Huh? No, the format of attendance is new. The date is not given. Dates are not given, right? Attendance date, man. No, uh, okay, fine. No issue. I was just asking. Okay. Without date. Okay. So today we will talk about friction and torque. Once we do that, we'll start solving some problems. So what is torque? You already know what a torque is, right? You must have learned it in your previous classes. Torque is a measure of force that would cause rotation. So you can also say torque is the equivalent of force when it comes to rotational motion. There are several quantities which we use as which we consider as equivalent in translational motion and rotational motion. So what is the equivalent of displacement in rotational motion? Can anyone tell me?
Sir, angular displacement.
Angular displacement, yes. That will be angular displacement. What is the equivalent of velocity? What is the equivalent of acceleration? Linear acceleration. That will be angular acceleration. And what quantity will be equivalent to force? that is torque. What quantity can be considered equivalent to mass? Can you tell me, do you remember what quantity will be equivalent to mass in a rotational motion? Does anyone remember? What will be this quantity? And that is mass moment of inertia. What about time? Is there something called angular time or something? No, time is the same. So all these physical quantities we usually deal with in the translational motion as an equivalent in rotational motion, and most of the equations of motion we have in translation can also be used in rotation if you use these equivalent quantities. There are you may know that there are usually three equations that we very commonly use in mechanics. Equations of motion for motion with a constant acceleration. You must remember these equations like v is equal to u plus at, v square is equal to u square plus 2as, s is equal to ut plus half at square. These are the equations, common equations in mechanics, which can also have a equivalent in rotational motion. So torque is the equivalent of force. So force causes linear motion in it tends to cause linear motion in translation, and torque tends to cause rotational motion. And you know how it is defined. What is there will be a difference in unit also. Force, usually torque will be if a force is causing a torque, the magnitude of torque will usually be force multiplied by the distance between the force and the point about which a body rotates, or the reference point. That is again not a very general way to say things, but I'm just trying to remind you some ideas which you already know. Let's say there is a mass m which is lying on a surface, flat surface. Surface is not smooth, surface is a little rough, and we apply a force F which changes with respect to time. on the mass m towards right. Now if we keep on increasing the force at t is equal to 0, at t is equal to 0, force is equal to 0, and as we increase the time, we linearly increase the force. Now if we draw the free body diagram, of this mass, what are the external forces on this mass? You will have weight acting downwards, normal force from surface acting upwards, and your external force F. We would rather call it P. We'll call it P. Okay, P is the external force. And what will be the so here you can see that, so if there is a rough surface, in the beginning if you apply a small force, the mass is not going to move. There is going to be, like, a friction from the surface. And what will be the magnitude of that friction? How does it behave? What is the maximum value of friction that the surface can offer? For simple cases, we use quantities like coefficient of friction to address the issue. So the frictional force from the surface will be opposite to that of the external force. And if the object is in equilibrium, net force in x direction should be 0. If the object is in equilibrium, if the object is in equilibrium, net force in x direction should be 0. That means external force should be equal to frictional force. Now what did I tell you? So we are increasing the force with respect to time. Now my question is, what will be the frictional force from the surface? So in the beginning, P of t will be 0, external force will be 0. That time friction is also 0. As we linearly increase the external force P, friction should be equal to it. So the frictional force increases as external force increases. Now until what point does this happen? See, if you apply a very large force, external force P, obviously the object is going to move towards right. Once the object initiate a motion towards right, the external force must be obviously greater than the friction. Means there should be a net force on the object towards right. So that also means that object will cease to be in equilibrium. The object will stop being in equilibrium. So what we know is that when the object starts moving, we don't really need to apply the amount of force that was needed to initiate the motion. It was found out that behavior is going to be something like this, that of the friction. Time, I can also write P here. Okay, P is the function of time, right? So I am saying that P is linearly increasing with respect to time. So I can write time here or P here. Okay, I'll write P, it's better. So until the motion start, as we keep on increasing the external force P, frictional force increases. At the instant where motion starts, the value of friction drops to a lower value, and after that it almost remains the same. This is not going to be the actual behavior. There are going to be some variations in the real case. But for the purpose of solving problems, we are going to assume that this is the way it happens. So here, so before the motion starts, you can see that P, F is proportional to P, I mean F is equal to P. Okay, we'll write here. So we use a quantity called coefficient of friction to define the maximum value of friction that can cause the motion. So that maximum value will be proportional to normal force. So here in this case, the friction will be equal to external force until the motion start, and this maximum value of friction to start the motion means this value will be equal to coefficient of static friction multiplied by normal force, and this value will be equal to coefficient of dynamic friction multiplied by normal force. So obviously coefficient of dynamic friction will be lower than that of static friction. So you need a larger force to initiate the motion than to sustain the motion. If you need 100 Newton to make sure that an object is accelerating, if you have a force more than 100 may be required to initiate the motion of it. So once you initiate the motion, you actually need a lower force to sustain the motion. This is again the things you are probably comfortable with. As you have studied these things earlier. So the frictional force during motion will be equal to mu multiplied by n, where mu is coefficient of dynamic friction. So in this case, n was quite n is straightforward as the object is horizontal. If object is lying on a inclined plane, you must remember that weight may not be equal to the normal force. So that's the cases in which some sort of complication arises. But anyway, these are the basic ideas. And I know that you already learned it. I was just trying to remind these things. Now, since we have talked about most of the basic concepts, we will start solving problems. This is very important. This is very difficult to deal with engineering mechanics if you don't solve problems. There are a few standard problems I am going to discuss. So I want you to solve these problems and submit it to me as an assignment. So here is the first question. So I'll briefly explain how you solve these problems, and you solve this and send this to me. So here the question is that there is a screw eye in this figure, which is subjected to two forces, F1 and F2. F1 is 100 Newton, F2 is 150 Newton. You need to determine the magnitude and direction of the resultant force. Very simple. But one condition here is that you need to find the answer using both parallelogram law of vector addition and the idea of rectangular components of vectors. How do you do that? How will you use parallelogram law of vector addition? So you have two forces, 150 and 100. This angle is 10 degree and this one is 15 degree. So if you are using the parallelogram law, you need to complete a parallelogram here. And resultant will be given by the diagonal here. And also, when I say parallelogram law, what I mean is that you need to use the analytical equation. You don't need to graphically solve this. Use the formula for the resultant. What is the formula? If you have two vectors A and B with an angle theta in between them, there is a formula you've learned, right? Square root of A square plus B square plus. You have to use that formula to find out the resultant, magnitude of resultant, and another formula for the angle, tan inverse this by this for this angle, and use the other angles to add up to find the required angle of the resultant with respect to horizontal force. This is something you already know. This is something you already discussed. We have discussed in the first class. You have two vectors. You have resultant R. R will be given by this equation. Use that equation to find out the magnitude of R, and use this equation, alpha is equal to tan inverse this equation, to find out alpha. Once you find out alpha, alpha is not what you need. Alpha is this angle. So alpha plus 15 will be the angle of the resultant with horizontal. That is the first part of the problem. In the second part of the problem, you are being asked to do the same thing using rectangular components. Find the answer using both parallelogram law of vector addition and the idea of rectangular components. How do you use rectangular components here? This is again something we have discussed earlier. if you have a vector, each of the given vector can be divided into two components, sin theta and cos theta components. Okay, if this is 100, if I divide, okay, we'll call this force this is P vector and this is Q vector. P vector can be written as (100 cos 15 into I plus 100 sin 15 into J. So 100 is the magnitude, 100 cos 15 will be the horizontal component, and 100 sin 15 will be the vertical component. So P can be written as 100 cos 15 I plus 100 sin 15 J. And Q vector can be, yeah, any questions? Q vector can be written as 150. What will be this total angle with respect to horizontal? That will be 90 minus 10. So cos 80 I plus 150 sin 80 J. So you can see what I have done here. I have taken the first vector.
Sir, you are muted, but
Yeah, any questions? Oh, how long have I been mute?
sir, 2 to 3 minutes, I guess.
2 to 3
Or
minutes.
something
Okay.
like more than
Okay,
minutes.
so this is something you need to take care about. Okay, I will not mute the mic at any point of time. If you see that my mic is muted, you need to immediately let me know. Okay, so I will never ever mute the mic during classes. If you find my mic mute, immediately let me know. I don't know how this happens. This automatically happens sometimes. So do it immediately. I don't know how much you have missed here. So the only thing you are doing here is magnitude of vector, cosine of angle between vector and horizontal component, the vector and horizontal. So 100 cos 15, 100 sin 15, the same angle, sine, use sine here for the vertical component. Now how do you add up the resultant vector R? Now this is very easy. See, I am making you do this to convince you that rectangular components, the idea of rectangular components is much better and easier compared to the other method. And some of you may use the other method hoping that it would be easier, but I really want to convince you here. So how do you add these two up? Now this is very easy, right? You just need to add up horizontal components. So if you add both horizontal components, that will be 100 cos 15 plus 150 cos 80 multiplied by I, plus similarly you can add up the vertical component. No, this is not cos. Okay, this is oh yeah, right, cos 80 sin 80, correct. Similarly 100 sine 15 plus 150 sine 80. So you can easily calculate it. So you will get the resultant as R is equal to Rx I plus Ry j. So the magnitude of R will be square root of Rx square plus Ry square, and this angle theta will be angle of the resultant with respect to horizontal will be tan inverse Ry by Rx. And unlike the previous method, this method can be used for a large number of vectors. Instead of P and Q, you have, let's say you have 10 or 20 vectors, P, Q, Rs, and so many vectors. You can divide each component vector into horizontal and vertical component, and all horizontal component can be added to get horizontal component of the resultant. All vertical component can be added to get the vertical component of resultant, and this is the resultant. That is the right way to, this is the way to represent resultant R. But if in the question if you are being specifically asked to find out the magnitude and angle, you can find out the magnitude of the vector using this equation. R is equal to square root of Rx square plus Ry square. Similarly, angle will be equal to tan inverse Ry by Rx. Simple and straightforward. So use these two methods to find out resultant here. So that will be problem number 1. Problem number 1 of your assignment. Now question number 2 is that you have a force F. What is this quantity? Force, it's not given in Newton. What is that quantity? It's the
Pound.
Yeah, it's the pound force. Pound force. If you'd like, I think it's a good idea to convert pound to pound force to Newton. How much is 1 pound? How do you convert pound force to Newton? One pound force is equal to 4.44822 Newton. So 100 pound force, 8 pound force. You use the converter, or you simply multiply. Remember, just remember that 1 pound force is equal to, I don't recommend remembering anything. Anyway, if you'd like, you can remember this and use for the conversion. So that force, 450 pound force, is acting on this frame. This is a simple frame that has 2 bars, AB and BA. C is pin joint to the surface, B is pin joint. Pin joint means you can rotate the bar about this point. Here also you have a pin joint, and you need to calculate the magnitude of force acting on the members AC and AB. State whether it is compression or tension. Interesting. How do you do that? Can you give it a guess? What is the difference between compression and tension? Compressive force in a bar if something is being compressed from either sides, that is called a compression. And if something is being pulled away from either sides, both sides, the bar is said to be under tension. So this is compression, this is tension. Now the question here is the question here is to calculate the magnitude of force acting on the members AC and AB, and also state whether it is under tension or compression. Can you guess the AC will be under tension or compression? What is your guess? The member AC, will it be under tension or compression? Anybody? Can anyone give me a guess? The member AC of the frame will be under compression or tension.
Sir, tension.
Okay. So this is compression, being pushed from either side, making it smaller. This is tension, pulled away and tends to make it longer. So say again, what is your guess? Yeah, can you speak again?
Sir, tension.
Yeah, AC will be you're guessing that AC will be under tension. What about AB?
Sir, compression.
Compression. Yeah, that's actually a very good guess, right? So the question is to state whether it is under tension or compression. But if you use the intuition and logic, you can kind of guess that AC will be under tension and AB will be under compression. So it's being pushed downwards. So you can kind of guess that AB is going to be compressed and AC will be under tensile force. But you can verify it. You don't need to use actually need to use this guesswork. If this is a very simple frame, so you can make this guess. If there is a very complicated frame with 5, 6, 7 or 8 members, you may not be able to guess. So we need to use a you need to use a standard technique. So one thing we know here is that the member AC will have its force in this direction. This is the direction of force for AC. And this is the direction of force for the member force in AB. So what you can do is that you can simply guess here. Guess means randomly guess if it's tension or compression. Do the calculation, and once you get negative value for some member force, you assume the you state that your guessed assumption was wrong, and you correct it. That is the procedure. Let's say both AC and AB assume that both AC and AB are under tension. That does not look like a good assumption, but let's just assume that way. Then how will we draw the free body diagram of the joint A? Joint A has for 50 pound force acting downwards, and if something is under tension, so this angle will be, this angle is 30 degree, and this also should be 30 degree. So this is 30, this is 45 degree. So this is member force in F AC, this is member force in AB, and you write down the equation for equilibrium, solve it. You will probably find out that in the answer you will get a positive value for AC and negative value for AB. So once you get negative value for AB, you will state that the member AB is not under tension, your assumption was wrong, it is under compression. That is the procedure. I don't think I need to write down the equation here. External force, this is 45 degree, this is 30 degree. So this is our free body diagram with all external forces. Now how do you write down equation? I will write down it for you because this can be a little tricky. I am writing the first equation. What will be this angle? 90 minus 30 minus 45. So it will be 15, right? Yes, that will be 15. So if sigma fx is equal to 0, f has no component in x direction. FAB has a component in x direction, that is FAB cos 15, and that is acting, that component will be towards left, so I'll put it a negative sign. And FBC has a component in horizontal direction, that is FBC cos 45. 45 is the angle between BC and horizontal. That is also acting towards left, so negative sign, nothing else. You can write f cos 90, you can write plus f cos 90, but that won't make any sense. It's 0. Similarly, net force in y direction is equal to 0. So component of FAB in y direction is FAB sine 15. That is acting downwards, hence negative. FBC sine 45. This cos will become sine, that's it. Cos sine. FBC, vertical component of FBC is also acting downwards, hence negative sign. And minus F. F is fully in vertical direction, that is also acting downwards, equal to 0. These are the two equations. So two unknowns, two equations and two unknowns. F is given. So you can easily solve it, right? FBC. You find out FBC, substitute it here, or use a calculator for a 2x2 system. 2x2 system F. How do you use that? Matrix. FAB FBC 0 F minus cos 15 minus cos 45 minus sin 15 minus sin 45. I don't know, you can use any method. Okay, I'm simply writing down this equation for I don't know if you remember how to do this. You can simply convert it to a system of this is a system of algebraic equation. AB will be this. If you take inverse of this quantity and multiply it with this quantity, you will get this. I don't know if you have learned about inverse already also. Anyway, forget about this. This is just this is not required. You can use any method. Since you have two equations with two unknowns, you already know how to solve it. That will be sufficient. And is there any mistake here? You need to I've quickly written down the equation. I'm not sure. So FAB cos 15 negative, FBC cos 45 negative, FAB sin 15 negative, FBC sin 45 negative minus F. I think this is correct. So find out the value of FAB and FBC. If FAB is positive, you say that your assumption in the beginning that the force is tensile is correct. And if FBC is negative, you say that the assumption you've taken that the FBC is tensile is wrong, and therefore it is compressive force. That is the procedure. So I will not give you the okay, I will upload the questions there. Once we go through all 4 questions, you can submit them as assignment. I think that is enough for today. Any questions? Any question?
Sir, about the assignment.
Where to submit the assignment?
Okay. So there are 4 questions, and we have discussed only about 2 questions. So as of now, you don't need to worry about submitting assignment. I will upload the questions in the website. You check the question, read the questions, and if you'd like, you can start solving it. The first 2 questions I've already described how to solve. So you can solve them and keep it with you. Once I talk about all the 4 problems in the assignment, you can submit. So that will be maybe next week. Once we complete, I'll tell you, okay, you can submit within 1 week or 2 weeks. So currently you don't have to worry about submitting anything. Currently focus on solving the problem I have described in the class. Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions?
No, sir.
Okay. So if there is something you haven't understood clearly, or if there is something that needs more explanation, if that is the case for anything I have discussed in the class, you need to immediately let me know. Since this is an online course, it's very difficult to communicate with people. It's very difficult for me to figure out whether you have understood something or not. I cannot talk to you directly. I can't see what you're doing. I know some of you may have simply logged in and went out somewhere. So there is absolutely no way to, make sure that everything is going well. So what you need to do is that if there is something you haven't understood or that needs further explanation, you let me know. We will discuss it.